Hello and welcome to the Moviescramble podcast. You join us on a day which is not actually January anymore. So we've gone past January the 51st and we are now into the second month of the year, and the sun has come out and it's actually quite lovely as well. Joining me today is a woman that I suspect long has had a list of people that she would bump off in order to get a job. So beware, final girls. And I'm kind of looking out myself in case I manage to get hit by maybe a piano dropping from a great height or from some unfortunate accident that may befall me. Mary, how the hell are you doing?
I am really well. And listen, whoever's name is on that list is between me and me.
Yeah, you and your maker.
Yeah.
If you haven't guessed already, today we are talking about the 2025 Korean film No Other Choice. The film was directed by the very, very renowned Park Chan Wook. It stars Lee Bung-hung, So Ji-min and Park Hee-sun. Based on the novel The Axe by Donald Westlake and was originally touted by Park Chan Wook in 2005 as his next project, but it has taken some time in order to come to fruition. Now, the story is about a man called Man-soo, played by Lee Bung-hun, who seemingly has everything. He has a settled family life, he has a nice house, and he has a job that he has been doing since he was a young man in the paper industry. It is a job he loves and a job that he lives for. Now, that job is now gone. He has been made redundant. He has lost his purpose as a man, as a family man, as a worker, and he has to do something about it. Eventually, he gets to the stage where he says, well, how can I actually tackle this and get another job? Given the fact that the paper industry is in some sort of turmoil, any job that he goes for, there will be at least 4 or 5 other people who are either equally as good as he is or better. What better way to eliminate the competition is to eliminate the competition. And this is what he sets out to do. Mary, the director himself, you have obviously seen a few of his films in the past, I would imagine.
Yes.
What were your expectations going into this latest film from Park Chan Wook?
So obviously very high because it's a Park Chan Wook film and you know his back catalogue. But I think tonally this felt different. So the first sort of trailer I saw from this, I don't want to say it seemed like kind of farcical, but it seemed very light, like a sort of like a light touch. And I was intrigued by that because usually, you know, you associate Park Chan Wook with high drama or murder or intrigue or something like that. And so this felt like it had a real levity to it that his other films didn't have. But then I didn't really think much more about it until I saw it was coming out in cinemas, obviously, more recently. And yeah, I mean, it completely surpassed expectations in that it felt so human and so urgent and so pertinent to the time that we're living in. But at the same time, you saw elements of Park Chan Wook as a director. Like, you didn't miss out on, you know, there's even like actors that he's brought in that, you know, were in previous films such as Old Boy. He's obviously worked with Lee Byung-hung before. But yeah, there was a real need to go and see it because I feel like he's one of those directors that you hear he's attached to a project and you go, yeah, no, I want to go and see it. It's just I thought it was going to be a very different type of film.
Yes, yeah. I am always a bit trepidatious about films from directors that I really, really like because it's always sitting in the back of your mind, is this going to be the one that's going to be the disappointment? Now, it's not really happened with Park Chan Wook because obviously you've got the Vengeance trilogy films.
Yes.
You've got Stoker, which is one of my favourite films. I love that movie. And obviously The Handmaiden as well. And he's done TV stuff as well. So everything that he's worked on and touched has been high standard. And there has been a wee bit of variety in there, but like I say, but it's usually based around like some sort of blood being involved at some point. Yeah. So yes, I was nervous about this film because of, like you say, the trailer was a little bit different. But I think, based on, well, we'll talk about how it actually went, but yes, I was a little nervous going into it. And the fact that it was a reasonably long runtime as well, which anything over 2 hours, you're kind of thinking, does it need to be? Are you sure about that? I know more and more films are now, but yes, I was a little, are we going to, what are we going to go here? How's it going to go? So, like you mentioned that this was a wee bit different, this film. So if you're to describe the film in just a single sentence without going into spoilers, could you?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I would say one sentence. It has all the drama of an opera, the intrigue of a Hitchcock film, and the farce of an Ealing comedy. There you go.
Nice. I was just going to say, man loses mojo, shit happens. So that kind of works.
That's way more succinct. Yeah.
So, were you drawn into the film right at the very start, or did you think it took a wee bit of time?
No, I feel like this is a film, and I know we talked about it being 2.5 hours. I could have watched another hour of this easily. Yeah. I felt instantly drawn into this. When we meet Mansu, he literally seems to have everything, as you said. Like he's barbecuing eel, which has been sent to him by his company. Thank you for your service. His wife is this beautiful socialite. She talks about dance lessons, tennis club. The kids seem to be doing well at school. Obviously, we kind of get a hint that one of his children is a prodigy. She's a cellist, and she seems to be, something of a bit of a genius at that. And he just seems really affable. And all of a sudden, all of that goes away. And I think, as somebody who's been made redundant within the last, 18 months or whatever, straight away I was like, God, I remember that. I remember how that felt. And because it's sort of bathed in this notion of, this shrinking sort of economy, the paper factories, the men in these factories are being replaced by AI. That's a conversation that loads of businesses are having. It just felt so real. And straight away, I felt like you were really invested in Mansu as a character, because in Korean culture in particular, men are breadwinners and they're not emotional as well. So for him to have lost his job but to have to keep a face on it, I just thought oh my God, this is so powerful. Straight away, I was really, really invested in his character.
Yeah, it was the initial scene, like you mentioned, kind of encapsulated everything. He's barbecuing and he sort of looks up and sort of smells the air and he says, I welcome the fall. He's welcoming autumn in because the leaves are starting to fall off. And his wife is saying, they must think really highly of you to give you such nice eel in order for, that, what a gift and all that. And he just, like you say, the camera pans round and sees his family, sees the 2 dogs playing, and everything's nice. The garden's really nice and everything. And then a wee cloud goes over the sun and you think,
there's a visual metaphor.
And it takes it from there, and you're kind of going, right, I want to know about this guy. He's apparently got everything, and they sort of reinforce that by having a group hug with all of them. And he's just saying how happy he is. And of course then it just cuts from there to the factory, and you hear somebody saying, about job cuts and how am I supposed to find all the 20%? And that's him actually practicing his speech for the Americans. Basically, the story behind it is the factory's been bought over, and the American company that's come in, you kind of get the idea that it's like investment bankers or something. It's not somebody who's interested in sort of paper business. And what they've done initially is they've cut 20% of the workforce, and this is where it's all going to go. And basically that's the slide. This is where you actually get into the sort of the meat of the main story in here as well. Now, that sort of transition into that, do you think that worked well? Do you think, it was very quick. It was just home life, bang, shit goes down, this has all happened. Do you think that kind of worked? It seemed very fast.
Yeah, but I really like that. But at the same time, your world does turn on a dime. Like again, just to relate it back to a personal experience, I was fully employed, and then Wednesday at 9 o'clock, Teams call with HR gets put in your diary, and there's no notice and there's no context, and you're like, yeah, I'm losing my job. And it happens that quickly. And I think that it was interesting that you saw his character sort of preparing this big speech, and he was going to be the sort of man of the people, and he was going to stand up for them. But, and quite pertinently, you see the American investors just getting in their car and fucking off because they don't care. They're here to make it more efficient. They're not interested in you not being able to put food on the table. They don't care that you've worked there and your father's worked there and your grandfather's worked there and that this paper mill's been in the town for generations. They're there to make it more efficient. And so his little speech goes completely unheard because he sort of shouts some of it through the car window, but they obviously put the car window up and drive off. And he's left with nothing. And then his co-worker says to him, "Did you take the eel?" And it's almost like an act of betrayal, like you were given that to sort of butter you up, you idiot. Like you didn't realize that this was you on your way out. So yeah, I think the abruptness of it is very real, because that is exactly how it happens. And we talked about it at the start of the pod, the people at the CCA in Glasgow, they had a job until they didn't. And that really is how these things go. It felt very authentic.
Yeah, you're right. The way that it all came about, the whole transition, it was really like less than 5 minutes that you got from him. You saw the scenes in the factory with people tapping the paper and all this, and it was all, it was busy, it was mechanical, there was like lots of pipes and steam and, and
it was very sort of,
it was very sort of old manufacturing kind of thing, but you saw the product and the care that they put into the product, and then obviously that all got blown away. And the next part after that was, all right, you've been made redundant, so therefore you're getting a sort of almost like an exit training course as well, and they were all sitting in a circle.
Oh, what did you cringe?
I know that's kind of that. How do you think that sort of like spoke about like the things like corporate culture and how they actually go into society, how society works in that sort of way? And it's kind of almost expected, but unexpected. You like to say it's unexpected because it's 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. You get, oh, it's an all staff meeting, and then by 3 o'clock you don't have a job. So it's very quick. How do you think that the film actually like sort of encapsulates all that? Do you think it does it well?
I think it does it really well. And I think if you've ever been in a corporate training day, that scene where they're all having to tap their head and repeat phrases, that we've all sat through that, like it's just a pile of shite. Or every employer that's like, we'll give you a good reference after you leave, like it all means nothing. And I think the futility that was felt in that scene, like these men all sitting saying, "I will find a job within 3 months and my family will support me," like you knew there and then that was just words that they were telling themselves, that the destruction of an industry in a small town, nobody's going to find a job at the same level, the same pay within 3 months, and your family aren't going to support you. Maybe they'll move on, or maybe you'll lose your house. Like it just felt so heartbreaking, because you knew that everybody sitting in that circle was going through the same thing, and you kind of felt like you knew what the outcome was going to be. So I definitely think it captures that notion of corporate culture, but also corporate change, and how cold that is as well. Like, 1 wee class where you're tapping your head 6 times isn't going to get you the job in the sort of glass and steel tower when you've been working in this small town paper mill for generations. Like it was a sort of, it underlined in a similar way to the Americans driving off in the car, not listening to Mansu. It just underlined how it was very box ticking. It was like, well, we've given them a class, so they should go out into the world and find a job. And just that sort of the coldness that you often feel, and also just a sense of loss. Like a lot of those men were genuinely grieving for the job that they had, because that was who they were. And I'm sure, as we'll go on to talk about, other characters in the film talk about, paper was their life for 30 years. And so, 1 wee corporate class where you, as I say, you tap your head and you say, "No, I am going to get a job," that doesn't fix everything. And it was cringy to watch, because, as I say, we've all been through a corporate training day similar to that, where you're saying buzzwords and you just know it means nothing.
Yeah, it was the way that they were all sort of sitting in a circle, and the woman who was presenting it, she was very professional about the whole thing, but very detached at the same time. She was going around and she was like touching their faces and saying, just keep the mantra. And the fact that they had all these, it was all very organized, because they've obviously must have done it.
Flashcards.
Yeah, and they were just, and they would be tearing bits off of the card because there was another phrase underneath that they were supposed to say and all that. And like you say, they're all sitting there tapping their head or tapping their neck. And you saw that throughout the film as well. He would come across people and they were all doing the same thing. Now, they were doing that in order to, it was almost like, just like say, a tick in the box exercise, rather than getting them prepared to go back out into the workforce again. They were just saying, it's like a manifestation, isn't it? That was the kind of thing. It's all sort of very sort of what would at one time be regarded as sort of new agey, but sort of standard corporate. I am that person. It's like all these sort of inspirational posts you get on LinkedIn, which do my head in. About being your best self and all that. But what they didn't do was they didn't actually prepare anybody for actually sitting down and having an interview.
No.
Which came back around, because it cuts to 3 months later. He's still working with paper, but he's actually got it in his shoulder because he's working in one of these sort of big box supermarkets, and he's shifting paper about. And I thought that was quite kind of a nice wee transition to making a paper to actually, having to sell it. And he gets the interview, and the interview goes really badly because sun's shining in his face. He doesn't know what to say. And you would think, well, maybe they should be preparing him for that rather than giving him like nice wee buzzwords that he can use. And then they eventually realize, all these people, that they don't have the skills in order to move forward. And it is a very competitive market. So they can't deal with the future in any meaningful way. And like you said there, their life is paper. These are career individuals. They go in and they do a job within an industry, and that's what they do. If that industry disappears, it's very difficult to retrain. It absolutely is. So you have to be in a place that, or several places, which you obviously have personal experience of yourself, like you said, and it's a terrible position to be in. A lot of people have been. I've been in it in the past as well, but that was a long time ago. I've been in a situation where I've been basically figured out myself. I'm kind of surplus to requirements. So, but I was able to do something about it reasonably quickly. I didn't have to like tap my head and sat about for 3 months. Yeah. So we've kind of talked about the sort of the background to the story itself and everything. Now, it obviously goes into a place where it gets a lot deeper and it changes as well. So were you expecting the film to be one sort of thing? Like you said, it kind of starts off like a bit like a kneeling comedy, if you like, because he comes up with a plan to eliminate the competition, and he does it in such a way that he uses paper to do it. Nothing's electronic. It's all letters and everything he gets sent about. So there's less of an online footprint for what he's doing. He basically sets up a company, and he figures out who all his competitors are, and he basically gets all their information in order to formulate a plan in order to kill them. Now, that was a kind of a wee bit of a switcheroo right there. Do you think that was an interesting turn? And were you expecting it to sort of kind of go that way?
Definitely wasn't expecting to go that way, but as you get more embedded into the film, you're like, this is actually really clever, because the guys that he sort of lures, it's actually quite heartbreaking when you meet them as well, because he sees them initially as competition, as in a CV. So it's just like a tiny little headshot, as is common on certain like Asian cultures. They have your photo on your CV. He had all their information, and he was grading them as to who he thought he was come up against. So up until that point, they were just men on paper, which of course is literally what their whole lives has been. But when he actually sort of started to kind of scope them out, I felt like that changed, because I think initially I thought maybe this was just going to be, he was going to scope them out, hunt them down and take them out. But when he actually saw them, and he saw his own desperation reflected back to him, because, they've become sort of, one of them's an alcoholic, one of them's in a sort of dead-end retail job, sort of desperate for, commission, and so often he actually can't meet these men in the eye, because when he sees them in the flesh, it's very different to them just being, as I say, names on paper. So I thought it was really clever that he set up, as I say, this fake company, fake interviews. He used the same language that had been used to him in the setup for the interview, i.e., the boss is just about to fly out the country, you'll have to interview today, which I thought was great. And then, of course, when he sort of abandoned his plan and panicked, what I loved is a couple of the men who were expecting phone calls or emails and were saying to their wives, like, oh, I've still not heard anything. And then it was like, oh, of course, it's a paper company. They'll send me a letter. So the whole setup of it, obviously it was to avoid him sort of leaving any trace behind of who he was. But the actual setup of it being a paper company using paper to get in touch with you, I just thought was an absolute touch of class. It was so clever. And there's moments, as I say, that when he meets these other characters that feel really desperate and heartbreaking, but there's also the sort of general clumsiness of how bad he is at being an assassin, because he's a paper man. He's Pulp Man of the Year. He's not a hitman. And so I did enjoy the sort of farcical elements of that as well, because, he's not meant to be like this, machine gun killer. He's just a guy who's lost his job and is feeling really desperate about it. So, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the elements that everybody had problems, and it all related back to his problems. Like I say, he used to have an alcohol problem when he was working and everything, so he couldn't really touch alcohol at all, and he was the alcoholic. And there was the guy in the shoe shop. He'd been working in the shop as well, and it was all to do with, they all had families and everything as well. So there was nothing sort of isolation. They were all married and settled, and yet they were all sort of in desperate situations and everything as well. So he could, the people he was trying to kill, he could relate to them as well. And he just, like I say, he was an ordinary guy. He knew what he had to do, and he had the tools available to him. He had a pistol, and he also was able to follow people. Like the first one he was basically going to go after, which is the image you see quite a lot, holding up the plant pot.
Yes.
And he just couldn't do it. He couldn't just drop it because morally it was wrong. There was no way that he could actually get there. And there's a nice wee funny end to that bit, because the plant he's holding up, he buys off of the person whose house it is, because he's like, oh, it's a really nice, because that's another element of it, because it shows his interests as well. Part of his interests is gardening and his greenhouse and everything as well. So it kind of all feeds into that as well. So it was very, very cleverly done. It wasn't just a very straightforward story. It brought in all these sort of different elements into the main story, which was good. And I really liked that. Now, in addition to the main story, you've got at least 3 subplots in this film, which may account for sort of the extended runtime. You've got the wife, who was a single mother before they got together, and she had a son. And since they got married, they've had a daughter as well. She has never married. She's been enjoying the sort of the trappings of being in a couple. Therefore, there's a bit more money that they've got because they're both together and everything. Because obviously he's in a reasonably well-paid job. And like you say, in that sort of situation, he's the breadwinner and she raises the family, which is a job and a half in itself, let's face it. But she's also developed interest. She plays tennis, they go dancing, that kind of thing. So she says, well, I'll get a job. So she gets a job working as a dental, it's not a receptionist, it's a dental
like
nurse.
A hygienist or something,
Yeah. So there's the whole sort of story about her as well. There's the story about the son who reacts to the situation they're in because they don't have any money by like starting to steal cell phones and things like that. And there's the daughter who is a musical prodigy, but won't play in front of the parents. She just seems to draw away and then play privately. You only hear her playing like single notes and things like that when she's playing. So there's all these elements that are going on at the same time, and they inform why he does. That's why he actually does what he's doing. But there's given space in the film. Do you think that was it enough, or do you think it was too much, or was it okay?
No, I think that's why I really loved this film as well, because there was so much going on, but all of it felt really fleshed out. And that's what I mean when I say I could have watched another hour of it easily. Like I genuinely cared about all of the characters and all of their situations. Like, when Son Ye-jin's character, Miri, she has to, she starts off the film, she's got this lovely sort of like sing-song quality to her voice. She's obviously beautifully dressed. He buys her fancy dancing shoes. And then sort of as the film goes on, like she's pushed into working for the very people that she used to socialize with, because it's her tennis partner that gives her the job. And we see a sort of awkward scene with one of her clients where, they used to play tennis together, and she's shocked that, Miri has to work. And her sort of emotional decline becomes very visible because she starts sort of walking about in baggy cardigans, her hair slightly unkempt. She's talking about selling the house. Like that whole kind of fall from grace, if you want to call it that, felt really palpable. Like her character was so well developed that you understood that it was painful and shameful for her to suddenly be serving the people that she used to sort of play alongside with or dance alongside with. You absolutely felt her shame. And I think it's shame that permeates a lot of this film as well, particularly that's what drives Mansu to do what he does. But with the characters of the children as well, like his son or stepson rather, is somewhat embarrassed at the family financial situation. So he and a rich friend, his dad owns the cell phone shop, decide they're going to steal in order to sell these phones on it and make some money. And he obviously overhears Mansu, what he's getting up to in the greenhouse, and there's a shame and a panic over that as well. And then we have the child prodigy, who both of her parents realise she must be very good at the cello because her teachers see how like phenomenal she is, but there's a shame that they can't pay for her to have these special private lessons, and also a shame around the fact that their daughter's quite obviously neurodivergent as well, because she parrots back whatever they say. She doesn't eat properly, as you say, she draws all the time. So all of these storylines sort of weave together this rich tapestry of human experience, and I think that's what makes this so unbelievably like flawless as a film, because I feel like you can really identify with all of these characters in a way that you probably don't get with a lot of other films. Because although this does descend into like farce, which I'm sure we'll talk about, three people rolling about in a floor looking for a gun, but there's something so human about it, which is hilarious in a film where humans are being replaced by AI and that's why they lose their jobs, right? It's just, but it's just so full of human experience. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And like you say, it's not an idealized setup. Things don't work out the way they do, or things don't work out as expected because it's human beings involved in it. It's not going, it's messy. The whole thing is messy. The whole film, not the actual production or anything, but the way that it sort of works its way out is messy, and it doesn't feel convoluted because situations are set up. He sets up situations in order to try and basically kill people, and it doesn't work out. But in doing so, it's adding elements of risk all over the place for people to do things. And obviously, it kind of feels like something that would happen because it is so messy and everything. The portrayal of Mansu by Lee Bung-hun, what did you think of that sort of central performance? Because that's the performance that glues the film together. He's there pretty much the majority of the film. Like I say, there are elements where there are some of the supporting characters, but I would say maybe about 80-85% of the film he's front and center. How do you think he did?
Yeah, I think he is phenomenal in this film. I think there's such a preciseness or precision rather in his portrayal of this character, because we feel and see how uptight he is and how stressed he is just by the way he physically carries himself. I'm not even talking about the fact that he's sitting with his leg bouncing in an interview or he's tapping. Like, we can see by his shoulders where he carries them that he is so stressed about not being able to give his family this life that is established at the start of the film. So it's quite a physical performance in that sense, but also in the sense that he's doing a lot of physical work. He's crawling through woodland, he's lifting bodies, he's trying to, kill a person, etc. So there's a physicality in that as well. But I think that, and it'll come back to this notion of shame again, like his sense of shame and his sense of panic is so clear throughout the whole film. And despite the fact that he knows there's a network of guys going through the exact same thing, because we see it, that his strain somehow feels so different and so intense. So I think he plays the character with a lot of clarity. as I say, a lot of precision. We feel his emotions, and I think we see his fear as well. Like there's a lot of like really beautiful close-ups where we can see him like physically sweating or trying to sort of choke back tears. And that is, that's really powerful. And I think for an actor to, I don't want to say allow himself, but you know what I mean? Like to see him be willing to sort of like lay it all out and, you know, have the camera so close in his face when he's really, you know, living through this, I think is absolutely phenomenal. I think his performance really holds all of this together. And it's, as I say, it's funny because I've been watching the press tour of this, and, you know, he said he was desperate to work with Park Chan Wook again. You know, it's been 20 years since they worked together, but that Park Chan Wook's nickname for him is Mr. Nag, because he asks too many questions about his character. But that thoroughness pays off because his character is so well-rounded, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've kind of nailed it with sort of fear. It's fear and panic all the way through, right from the point where when he's told about the eel, he kind of thinks, oh my God. And it just follows through from there, where he's sitting in the sort of the group circle and he's crying, he's wiping away tears and everything because he's scared, he's frightened, he just doesn't know what's going to happen. When he's in the interview, he tries to be all jovial and nice, but he can't see people and the sun's in his eyes. And you can just see the panic rising in him. Yeah. And it just seems to, it gets to a level and then kind of drops down a wee bit and then it goes up again as the film progresses, everything that he's involved in, and the fact that he just doesn't know what he's doing. He's got an idea about what he's doing, and he can take it to a certain level where, like, he says, right, he kind of figures out that if he's going to kill somebody and it's in like a sort of a woodland area, then he needs to be protected, but he's wearing like big waders in order to do this because, you know, this kind of thing. And all it does is hinder him as well because he can't get about in them and everything. And you're just, oh my God. And when things go sideways, and they do so many times, he's got no plan. He's got no backup. It's just, this is what he needs to do. I need to do this, and then everything will be okay and I can move on and do the next person. But when he doesn't, and it's not really a spoiler, when he's unable to kill the first person, then everything after that is, you know, it is a will he, won't he? And you're kind of looking at him, and he's in exactly the same position. He doesn't know what he can and cannot do. He's wanting to, but there's a sort of a moral aspect to it as well, in terms of like taking a life, you know, all that kind of thing. So he's really sort of stuck because it's between his own personal happiness and future and, you know, he's doing what's right, basically. So I thought that was incredible. I thought he's a really good performer anyway. And I saw him years and years ago in a film called A Bittersweet Life, where he plays sort of a hitman, a fixer for a sort of mob organization in South Korea, and things go sideways there. And it's a very, very different character, the way that he manages situations and a lot more action and stuff. He's a particularly good actor. I've seen a few times. He was in Squid Game and stuff like that as well. So he's been around in quite a few things. But yes, I felt this was a great performance, and the way that he kind of put together the character in terms of, like, he had a wee moustache and he was quite neat and proper, but he wasn't flashy in any way. He was like a supervisor, but he was very much part of a team. He dressed like, say, the rest of the team. And he didn't really have any sort of idea about how to prepare for all these different things he was doing. He would just rock up wearing his normal clothes and everything like that, you know, and sometimes he wouldn't have gloves on and all this as well. So you're kind of thinking, you don't really know what you're doing here. It's all just kind of off the cuff. So what about the supporting performances? We've talked about the characters, the family, and some of the other papermen and stuff. What did you think about their contributions to the movie?
Yeah, I don't think there's a single character in this film that doesn't feel fleshed out. Like, I feel like everyone has the chance to really develop, as I had said, like Miri at the start of the film versus, you know, Miri towards the end of the film, where she's just, you know, the final notices keep piling up. She's struggling to connect with her daughter. They're worried about their son who's suddenly become this delinquent. Like, that all feels very real and very credible as well. And as I've said, the different papermen that he encounters, his desperation is reflected back to him, like the man that he encounters at in the shoe shop, and he's like, I don't get commission if you don't make the sale through me. And it's like he's practically gripping onto him, like begging him to come back and make a purchase. And that just, you had a real sense of who everyone was, you know. And in a lot of the cases, these were men who their whole lives had been mapped out for them. They went to work in the factory the same way that generations before them had. They wore a certain type of suit. They would work there until they retired. You know, you would probably get a gold watch and a handshake and off you go. And that sort of sense of loss and not knowing what to do with yourself, because let's be honest, whether we like our jobs or not, they make up like what 80% of our week. They're a big part of who we are, and when that gets taken away, you know, it's like, who are you? You know, do you roll back into becoming a heavy drinker? Do you just take any job because it's the only solution out there? You know, there's so much that's going on in this that nobody feels like a background character. You know, everyone feels like you totally understand who they are, what they're doing in this story, and ultimately what's going to happen to them as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I say, they're all very rounded characters. I particularly liked the last guy that he had encounters with, who had his own place in the island, and he put on like TikTok videos of like, here I am chopping wood and all this. And it was all about being very sort of macho. And the whole thing about that, or what I took from that, was that with the likes of TikTok and Instagram and everything, you curate your own life.
Absolutely.
You put the bits out there that you want other people to see. So if you didn't read into it as much, a lot of people know that these are fake and, you know, it's not something to aspire to. But if you look at it on the face of it and you're desperate enough and you see this guy who is massively successful, he's got everything he needs, you know, he's sitting in his perfect garden and all this, and he's having a great time. And then you cut to the reality of it. He's sitting in front of a sort of wee bonfire, and he says, I've been here 6 months and I've never lit this fire once. You know, it's because his lifestyle is completely different to it. He's alone. He's got this big house, but there's nobody there that he's actually sharing it with. He's lonely. He doesn't know what to do. He drinks heavily. He's as desperate as the rest of them because he can see what's coming. The paper industry is really sort of falling to bits. There's a real lack of jobs for anybody out there. So therefore, he hides everything as well. And I thought that was really, really nice. I really liked that sort of character. And I really liked the character of the wife as well, because she was doing her best about everything. She was fully supportive of him. She never once really said to him, look, you really need to sort of sort yourself out here. Some of the other wives seem to be doing that. Was like the one who was like a complete alkie. He was just sitting there drinking all day, and she would just shout at him saying, you know, you're a disgrace, you know, this is terrible. But she was fully supportive, and I liked that portrayal as well. I thought it was very sympathetic. It wasn't shouty, preachy. There was no eye rolling. The whole tone of it was always sympathetic, whereas you could get away with sort of changing it up a wee bit. And I did like that. It was really good support for the main character, and it really kind of informed why he was continuing to do it, because if he's got a supportive wife and a supportive family, then that's one of the reasons why he's wanting to, you know, get another job and everything as well. So I kind of mentioned it at the start of it. So the sort of the visual cues and themes of the film, how do you think that kind of informed the story here?
So I think there's quite a lot going on in this film in terms of visuals. It felt really restless a lot of the time, which obviously is reflected in the lead character. But I really like sudden close-ups or abrupt sort of pull-outs that they did a lot throughout, because I felt like it really underlined the kind of absurdity of a lot of the film as well. And you knew that when you were going to get, like, you know, Mansu sort of framed, like, you know, his head taking up the entire screen, that this is going to be like a sort of key character moment. And that the first kind of real time we see that is when he is about to drop the plant pot, and the water, the stale green plant water, starts to drip down over his perfectly coiffured hair and down his face and down his suit. So I think there's a lot of kind of intimate type shots that kind of force us more into his world. And even when we do get the bigger sort of crowd scenes, such as the dance recital kind of thing that all the adults go to, we're still very much aware of his mindset and his psyche at that point, because they had that big blowout afterwards where he basically grabs her underwear off her and accuses her of having an affair. And it's the first time we see him sort of break as a person as well. He has been relatively like calm up until this point, but of course media is the kind of like, what do we call it, like emotional punching bag, as it were, for him. And he's sort of really frustrated about the jobs market. So I think it does do a lot sort of visually that's really interesting as well. Like, as I say, there's an extended scene of like a kind of farce, and there's a three-way scuffle over a gun, and the camera becomes very kinetic again. And I just think like he's making really interesting choices here, but at times you could almost say it's documentary, like, you know, with the sort of like rough edges a lot there was to the film as well. Like it wasn't a kind of flawless production. But yeah, I think in terms of Park Chan Wook's direction, this is probably one of the more interesting films in terms of the choices that he has made. It's not presented as a straightforward drama anyway.
Yeah, I liked the sort of the way that, like I mentioned at the start, the introduction to it, it's all nice blue skies, and you get that quite a lot. That's coming back. You don't see a lot of like depressing rain and stuff, and that there's not very much of that in here at all. Whereas that could easily have been used as an indication of, you know, state of mind and things like that as well. Yeah, exactly. And the way that you'd mentioned it before, the use of close-ups and everything, focusing on the emotion in the face, and that goes back to the way that the character was brought through as well, because sort of close-up, very in-your-face camera work. There's nowhere to hide. Emotions are right at the surface in these type of things as well. And they used a nice wee visual technique where he was phoning his wife to tell her about the fact that he's being made redundant. He's going through this whole training course thing. And she's on the tennis court at the time, so there's a nice wee bit where she's like back and forth, and it's kind of semi-slow motion. It's kind of slowed down a wee bit. And then when they actually speak on the phone, you do not hear their conversation. You see her reaction. She's holding the phone, and it's her reaction to it, and then she speaks to him. So you don't see him basically doing a plot summary, which that would be, and because there is no need for it. Because if you're invested with the film at that point, you know exactly what's going on. You don't need to. A lesser film would have had them having the conversation.
100%.
And that would have taken a minute and a half, 2 minutes for them to have the conversation back and forth about all that. Cut that completely out. Didn't need it. I thought that's pretty much perfect. It works so well in that respect. And also I really like the sort of the aspects of the factories, where it gives you the scale of what they're doing, the enterprise in actually making paper, and the work that goes into it. It shows you that at the start and at the end as well. There's a contrast between how they do it with machines.
That's one of the more gorgeous scenes of the film. Like, I really like the contrast in that, because in terms of his character, you feel like the writing's on the wall for him anyway. So he might think he's sort of won the battle, as it were, but ultimately he's lost the war. But yeah, I really like the setup of the factories, because again, it sort of lent into this idea that this had been happening for generations. Like it felt kind of old and creaky, but as you say, that it was a complete labour of love for every single character, that, you know, whatever their part in production was, because it wasn't just like paper for writing on. They say that they're making paper for, like, you know, government documents, lottery tickets, passports, like all these sort of like really important things that you have in life. So there is a sort of care of the work that goes into it. And I feel like you felt that from the creak of the machines.
Yeah, it's interesting what they said about what they actually use the paper for, because you don't think about it in that sort of term, and how these industries are lost. I mean, there was a big one a couple of years ago where we got our blue passports back, but it was a non-British company that actually makes them. Because it was cheaper. And you're saying, well, you know, and that's obviously a blow to a British paper factory, that they're not actually producing these things, and it's the same, you know, the themes are there all the time. So which scene do you think worked best for yourself, or you enjoyed? You know?
Do you know what I loved? There's the scene at the end where the alcoholic guy's obviously gone missing, and the police come in to interview his wife. Now, we know from previous scenes that she's an actress, but she's not a very good one, because she said that she has tried to get the part of a grieving widow and she's failed. Now, And then she sits through that scene crying and giving it, oh, you know, he was the love of my life, and I'm terrified that he's gone, but he was a drinker. And that to me was so clever, because we know who this character is. She resents her husband. She resents his unemployment. She resents his alcoholism, because it's her that's having to go out and, you know, do all these auditions, and she hates it and she's not very good at it. But then here comes her moment to shine. She gets to be the grieving widow, and I just thought that was so clever. It's maybe only like a 2-minute scene at the most, but I just thought, oh, she got the part, essentially. I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, for me, it was one of the wee early scenes where he's following the first guy that he's targeted, and it just plays out like a spy film, because he's sort of following him up and down sort of alleyways and everything like that, and it's all very, very tight and very precise and everything. And you think, is this going to turn into some sort of spy thriller? Is he going to sort of unearth skills that he didn't really know he had before? And he seems to be doing everything right. He's just staying just outside of the vision of the guy. And then when he sees an opportunity to actually kill him as well, and you think, oh, this is going to go this, oh, this could be quite interesting. You know, is he going to start like ticking off people off a list and all that? And then obviously it all goes to shit. You think, so this is where the film's going. So it's a real indication of what's actually happening with the film. So yeah, I really did enjoy that. I thought that was particularly fun. I mean, there's loads of bits in it. You could talk all day, but I think obviously we'd go into a wee bit of spoilers and things like that. Yes. So do you think the balance between humour and sort of the more darker elements worked as well as it should?
Yeah, I definitely think the script, obviously, it sort of blends kind of family drama with dark comedy, with state of the nation, stroke economy, stroke murder. And that's that's a lot. That's a lot for a script to do. But I actually think that the humour sort of ends up sharpening the tragedy at various points, and the desperation of it all does sort of make things funny that maybe wouldn't otherwise be. So I think it does get the balance right, because, you know, after all, if we're talking about life and humans are, you know, life is both. There is darkness and light in everyone's week, month, day, whatever. So I think it does. I think it strikes the balance really well.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we have seen films that just focus on one or other of the elements in these type of situations. And yes, they can work, but it's a far more difficult thing to kind of get a balance and make it feel sort of semi-realistic, so you're still engaged with the story. But yeah, I think it does work here. I really do. So given all that, would you recommend this film?
Absolutely. Honestly, do not be put off by runtimes. Do not be put off by subtitles. This is genuinely, like, it's so complex, but it's so compelling. Like, it's so thoroughly watchable. And a lot of that is down to, as I say, the performances, but also the sharpness of the writing as well. Absolutely. If you get the opportunity, seek this out. You will not be disappointed.
Yes, I would completely agree with that. I think it's a pretty damn good film, and it's a very good way to, like you say, start off your list of top films of 2026. Yeah. Definitely is. It is a bit of a shame that it's not up for Oscar contention. It was on the short list.
It has been very, very snubbed. And I wondered initially if it was because of release dates, had it not made the cutoff. But as you said, it was on some shortlists. So it's just a complete oversight. I mean, surely the, you know, adapted screenplay and best actor should have been, and possibly best director should have been shoo-ins, but apparently not.
Yep. If they'd been really stellar, maybe the dogs might have been up for the Palm Dog at Cannes. You never know.
Yes, yes.
So that is our review and conversation about Park Chan Wook's No Other Choice. To follow up that, we thought we would choose our top 3 films based around the fact of a character at the end of his tether in some sort of extreme situation and how they go about it. Now, there are a number of films and filmmakers that kind of do this all. Personally, I wanted to avoid some of the more obvious ones, as did you, Mary. You mentioned Falling Down as probably the most prominent one which, yes.
It's the one I threaten to do on a weekly basis. I always say, I'm going to go film Michael Douglas this week. And so, it's
and also, basically anything from sort of classic Hitchcock as well. You've got the sort of the desperate man in there as well. So because we obviously have talked extensively about Hitchcock, I always want to avoid that as well. So we shall start off with yourself, Mary. What is your first choice?
So for my first choice, I have gone for Pedro Almodovar's 1988 film, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. And I feel like the title says it all. So basically how the character of Peppa, played by the phenomenal Carmen Maura, her crisis starts with sudden abandonment. So her lover, Ivan, just leaves. No explanation, just goes. She can't reach him. She doesn't understand why he's gone. And so this lack of closure basically sends her off on a spiral. And it gets worse when she finds out that he's entangled in all sorts of other complicated relationships. So her emotional unraveling, a little bit like No Other Choice, it sort of manifests itself in like a chaotic comedy, but there is a kind of darkness to it as well. So she accidentally spikes a batch of gazpacho with sleeping pills. Her apartment becomes this sort of revolving door of stressed and eccentric characters. She ricochets between fury and grief and this, manic determination that she's going to confront Ivan. And the breakdown is played for humour, but obviously it is rooted in a sort of very real sense of rejection and emotional exhaustion. Carmen Maura's performance is phenomenal. She is brilliant at playing this kind of frazzled but composed woman. She is funny, but Peppa never allows her to become like a parody character either. She really balances this sense of like the emotional despair with screwball timing, which is again kind of similar to No Other Choice. And obviously any stillness in the quieter moments gives the character like a real sense of depth. For me, this film is sort of like peak Almodovar, in terms of the casting, but also the sort of pop art colours, the melodrama, the absurdity of it all wrapped around the story of a woman's psyche at this particular moment in time. So I think, as I say, it shows how comedy and crisis can exist together, which I thought tied in really nicely with what we've talked about. And as I say, I feel like the title of the film is one of the best in cinema, so I had to go with it.
Yeah, well, quite right, yeah. I have not seen this film for some time, and I actually, as I look to my left, for anybody that's listening, obviously because we're not a visual medium, I have 3 different Almodovar box sets sitting there. There's a one that's volume 1 and volume 2. And there's also this other one that's like a sort of 5-disc set, sort of later ones. And I have been meaning to sort of marathon them for some time now because I want to go through all of them. Some of the early ones I've missed, but I've seen sort of the majority of them all the time. And this is obviously one of the highlights. It's a fantastic movie. If you hadn't picked it, I would have put it that way. Because it's one that I thought about initially, because just from the title alone, you're thinking, well, that kind of fits the brief here. That's quite a good one. But yes, very, very good choice. I don't know why I keep saying very, very good choice, because you don't make shite choices.
I would like that writing.
Apart from spending your Sunday mornings,
Not at all. This is the highlight of my week.
Hardly. But I'll take it. Okay, my first choice is the 1975 film 3 Days of the Condor, directed by Sidney Pollack, starring Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, Cliff Robertson, and Max von Sydow. It is a conspiracy thriller. Robert Redford plays a CIA analyst whose job is to read stuff. He reads books, pamphlets, magazines, and tries to find patterns and any sort of hidden meanings or trends that may be of interest to the CIA. He works in this sort of, it's almost like a converted sort of 2-3 story house, townhouse in New York. And they're all part of this sort of very sort of tight team. They're all academics, all do reading and analysis and everything. Some interesting computer visuals. So you're looking at 1975's computers here as well. He goes out to purchase lunch for the team, as everybody has a turn to do it. And when he returns, everybody is dead. They have all been shot, and he has no idea why. Now, he initially panics, But then, because he is actually quite a smart guy, he tries to figure out, one, why everybody died and why he is still alive. And because he is an amateur, he does amateur things, so he's unpredictable. So there is at least one team of assassins looking out for him, trying to find him, which he obviously is trying to evade. So he does things that are uncommon in terms of sort of tradecraft and things like that. He, in his desperation, basically kidnaps a woman so that he can actually stay in her apartment, because she's a complete random person. It turns out it's Faye Dunaway playing the part. And from there, he tries to figure out what is going on. Is the CIA involved? Is it somebody else that's actually doing it? And how to try and get out of the situation. Obviously, it ties in with the Man Edge's tether and sort of desperation, and the fact that he is working completely alone and there's nowhere he can go. He can't go back to his own apartment. He doesn't trust anybody because he's in an organization where nobody trusts anybody at all. And he is kind of lost and bewildered at times as well. Now, this is kind of a nice wee tight thriller, if you like. It plays out very well. Obviously, with the cast list, you've got sort of top-notch actors in there.
Fact, yeah.
It's based on a book called 60s of the Condor, which obviously they thought was maybe a bit too much. Yeah. And it is, there is one sort of brief, there's maybe two brief sort of action scenes in here. There's a fight scene and maybe a car chase as well, but the rest of it is either people talking in rooms or people talking on phones, and it works splendidly. It's just really, really good. It cuts it right down so that there's no sort of excess in this as well, and it just works really, really well. It's a film I've loved. I loved all these sort of conspiracy theories, like Parallax View and things like that, from round about that sort of time, and this was right up there with that, because it was a very weird time politically, especially in the United States.
Nothing has changed.
yeah. No, well, it's gone from weird to being like just a complete shit show now. Everything's out in the open, I think. Yeah. Again, I've curtailed my chances of ever getting back into the US. But never mind.
No,
but yes,
what a film.
Really good film.
Yeah. That's a film that I would class as what I would call a Papa Charlie special, because when I think of films like that, that's the type of film and books that my papa would have had and would have watched like quite religiously, like as you say, like Parallax View, all that sort of thing. Like that's very much his bag, and yeah, the cast is incredible, and that's a great first choice.
Brilliant, good stuff. Your second choice, please.
So I've gone from colourful pop art to what the fuckery for my second choice. I've gone with Andrzej Zawadzki's 1981 film Possession. Now, I've watched this recently and I still don't know what the fuck is going on in this film. Like, basically, it's set around two characters played by Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill, and it's in the middle of like Cold War Berlin. They're in the middle of going through a divorce. They have a young son, and basically Isabelle Adjani's character completely unravels, like psychologically. She seems to be having some sort of like existential crisis, and there's, as the film progresses, a sort of disassociation from her own body, really. Sam Neill's character is like violent, obsessive, erratic. He, thinks that she's having an affair with people, the neighbours across the hallway and stuff like that. But kind of the most famous scene in this film is her breakdown. It happens in a kind of tiled underpass, and she is, convulsing, screaming. It looks like maybe she's having a miscarriage. It's never really explained. There's like kind of white goo as well coming over. It's just this extreme psychological meltdown, and it was kind of referenced in The First Omen as well. There was a kind of homage to that in that, and then she sort of abandons her family and moves into this apartment where there appears to be like a creature growing out the wall that she decides to nurse. And obviously critics have said it's, a physical manifestation of her alienation. But you can just watch this film and go, I have no idea what's happened. So there's a lot of sort of body horror, apocalyptic imagery, sort of psychological collapse. And I think that Isabelle Adjani's performance here is, flawless. It's very raw. It's very fearless. As I say, the underpass scene is one of the most famous maybe in history. She feels fragile. She feels manic. She feels dangerous. And all of this, as I say, is triggered from the domestic situation and the wider world situation. As I said, it's set in the Cold War. So there's a paranoia that exists, just within So I think it's one of these films where you don't necessarily have to know what's going on all the time because the performances are quite abstract as well. Like I remember the first time I watched this, I thought, what the hell is Sam Neill doing? Like this is really bad acting. But actually you realise it's kind of playing into the sort of wider vibe of the film, as it were. But I think to me, the imagery of her sort of breaking down and that the child surrounding and it all just coming out of her, I just thought was absolutely phenomenal and worth talking about. So yeah, that's my second choice.
I have never seen this film.
Oh, please watch it because it is one of these films you're just going, what the actual fuck has happened? Like, as I say, there's so many readings to it because I have read about it after watching it and I was like, oh, I never thought about that. Or maybe that does mean a metaphor for something else. But I think it is one of these films where you can just watch it and not know what's going on and it'll still be really powerful.
Brilliant. I will add that to my watch list and try and find it. I'm sure it'll be popping up in Film 4 or something at one point.
Oh, definitely. We've got an old DVD. The cover for it is quite iconic as well. It looks like a Medusa head and like one of the snakes appears to be coming out of her nipple. It's quite a iconic sort of piece of cover art as well. Yeah. Nice.
I look forward to that. Look forward to seeing the cover art as well. Okay, my second choice is the David Fincher film The Game from 1997, starring Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. This is a story of Nicholas Van Outen, an investment banker who is turning 48 years old. The age is significant because at 48, his father killed himself by throwing himself off the top of the biggest house in the street, as he calls it at one point. It's this big sort of mansion that he has, and Nicholas witnesses his father actually throwing himself off, and there's no particular reason behind it. It's never really been explained because he was quite a private man who did what he had to do in order to provide for his family. He's very successful and everything. Nicholas, in a way, has followed in his father's footsteps, taking over the company, working at it, making it massively successful, to the extent that he is alone. He is just recently divorced from his wife, who he basically had very little time for, and that's all part of his personality. Now, into this mix, his brother returns. His brother is a former addict who seems to be totally clean now, and when they meet up, the first thing Nicholas says to his brother, who's played by Sean Penn, is, what is it that you want? Do you want money? And he says, no, I don't want anything. I've got something for you. And he gives him this card that says, you're invited to this organization. And it's a birthday. It's an experience, he calls it. So he is kind of mildly intrigued by it. Goes along, spends about 3 or 4 hours getting all sorts of tests done. And then afterwards gets told, no, you've been rejected from this. You're getting it. And he's really peeved because he's a guy who, he is a kind of the sort of similar idea to his character in Wall Street, Michael Douglas' character in Wall Street. He's a winner, like he's not regarded as being a loser. He preys on the little people. It's all about the money. It's all about the bottom line for him. So by getting rejected, he's a bit peeved about it, and he obviously tries to find out about the company. But at the same time, the game has started. And basically, over the course of a couple of days, his life goes to shit. He realizes he's told he's in a game, but then things go to such an extreme, as in people are trying to kill him, and he doesn't know what's real and what's not real. It plays into his own sort of personal insecurities about his relationship with his father, why his father killed himself. Is he the same type of person as well? And it drives into this because he doesn't realize that the game can be all-encompassing. At one point, he's in a taxi cab that drives off a key, and basically he's underwater and he's going to drown, and you can see him going, this feels too real to be a game. It can't possibly be. And there's the whole intrigue and the sort of like the thriller element about it. Who are the company? And they can't find what they're doing, and his brother seems to disappear, and it just sort of spirals out of control for him, and people think he's mad, and just he's starting to actually doubt his own sanity and everything as well. And this just keeps ramping up and ramping up. And you're kind of going along with it thinking, yeah, it's just a game. So, it's, but then you start to doubt yourself as well when you're watching it, because things are too real. And you think, could this actually be done, and all this? And obviously there's a massive big sort of climax at the end where everything is kind of brought together. And yeah, I would say it's settled. I mean, we're talking about a film that's nearly 20 years old, but the whole point of it is it's a guy who thinks he's in control, but at each turn he is that's just chipped away and eroded, and he's totally out of control. And he realizes it's almost like there's a wee bit of the George Bailey element in here as well, because it's kind of like he sees how other people see him and what his worth is. Not so much the angel and all this kind of thing, but he kind of sees what his worth is in the greater sense rather than just in a monetary sense or a business sense, and the type of person he is, what he's kind of missed out on and all that, especially with his marriage and all this. So yeah, it's really, really interesting film. I watched it yesterday because I've got it on a DVD copy, and I haven't watched it for years and years. And I thought that, but as soon as we talked to this, I thought that would be a good one to actually put into the mix here, because it kind of fits reasonably nicely, and it's not something that you hear an awful lot of people talking about, especially since it's a David Fincher film. I know there's far better films, but it's a good example.
It really is, and I actually had kind of forgotten this film existed until you said you were going to talk about it. And I was like, oh God, yeah, that is a really good one. But yeah, I feel like I've not seen that for years, and it probably will be on a streamer or something somewhere, but it has made me want to go back and rewatch it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth rewatching. I couldn't find. I initially searched. I don't know why I searched for it on a streaming service if I've got a copy of it. I should really just use.
I know, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I searched anyway, but it's not readily available. I think you can rent it, but it's not actually streaming on any particular service. But that's the way it goes. So, your third and final choice.
So I realised I've gone for a trio of women on the verge of a nervous breakdown, basically. My last pick is Billy Wilder's 1950 film Sunset Boulevard, because how could we talk about people on the brink and not talk about Norma Desmond? So she obviously is a character played by Gloria Swanson, who's driven to collapse basically by her delusion, her nostalgia. She's a faded silent film star. She lives in a decaying mansion, and she basically lives by replaying her past glories. Essentially, this is a film that you could read it as Hollywood's, indifference to aging women, which is still a thing, but also her own descent into kind of this fantasy world that she has and her inability to accept her irrelevance. She obviously becomes increasingly possessive of Joe Gillis, convinced that a grand comeback is imminent. She writes herself this ridiculously large script that's completely unusable. It's never going to be made into a film. She's completely isolated from reality. She's desperate to maintain the illusion of her fame. She's paranoid. She's jealous, and obviously her sort of denial as to who she is and what she wants culminates in murder. Her final moments when she comes down the stairs believing the cameras are still rolling is one of the most iconic misquotes in all of cinema. But it actually shows her complete psychological rupture by the end of the film. There is no return from the brink. She is completely gone, and I love the performance. It's grandiose, it's brittle, it's theatrical, but it's also really tragic as well, because she's trapped in this little fantasy of her own making. And obviously it leans into the sort of theatricality of silent era style acting as well. So everything's quite hyperbolic, everything's quite over the top, but it becomes this kind of performance that's like grotesque, but you pity her. She's glamorous, but she's also just really just so far gone as well. Like, her madness is just like all pervading. So I think this is a film that obviously kind of critiques the way performers are sort of consumed and spat out. It's a tale for the ages, etc. But I think that, as I say, that final piece to camera down the stairs is one of the most famous breakdowns of all time, and as it should be, it's fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that the character is 50 years old in
I
the
know, and
film.
I always think she's meant to be like 80 or something, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not. She's just 50. She's a
yeah.
baby.
Because she was in one of the scenes, she is told to start acting her age. Says, you're a 50-year-old woman, for God's sake, act your age. And you're thinking, that's nothing. Compared to
Yeah.
now, that's nothing. But in terms of Hollywood, it's still over the hill.
Oh, it's 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You might as well be a corpse for the chances of getting a role that wouldn't go to Meryl Streep, you know. So, but yeah, that
Oh
whole
my
film
God,
is just
someone's going to no other choice, Meryl Streep. That's what's going to happen.
yeah. See that premise would actually work just as well in a sort of
With
Hollywood
actors.
setting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would.
I'm sure it's probably been done in some horror
Probably.
film already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sunset Boulevard's a classic, right from the word go, where you get the voiceover and you get the shot from inside the swimming pool
Yeah.
up, and you think, oh, it's just, or no, it's on top of the swimming pool, isn't it? It's
Yeah, and it's
down,
just a
so you see the
floating.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get it reverses it, does it not? So you
Yeah.
actually
And you
see
see him from
his face.
underneath.
Yeah, yeah. It's just brilliant. Such a good film and such good performances in it. Just cracking. And like you say, iconic moments, misquoted moments,
Yeah.
and over the top performances. But the over top performances because of the style of the actor as well, you know, that she is actually playing. So you're thinking, yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Such a good choice. Well done.
Thank
Nice one. Okay. For my final choice, I'm going with the 2025 version of The Running Man from director Edgar Wright, which stars Glenn Powell in the main role. This is obviously a much closer version to the Stephen King story than the Running Man film from Arnold Schwarzenegger from back in the 80s. For a start, they don't wear like sort of spandex onesies in this film. It is a little more gritty. Basically, the story behind it, Glenn Powell plays a character called Ben, who is out of work because of his temper to a certain extent. He is married and he has a child who is sick and is in need of medicine, which they cannot afford because they don't have universal health care. Americans, So in order to try and make a bit of money, he goes to the one place that is actually looking for people, which is the all-pervading network television, which seems to hold sway across the whole of the nation. They run a number of different types of game shows where you can make money. Like there's one that they say where you're on a bicycle and you have to answer questions within a certain amount of time and you can earn up to like $1,000. And he's like, I want to do that. I would be able to answer the questions. I know what I'm doing and all that. But during the interviews, when it comes out that his anger is actually a factor, they figure out, yeah, he can be a prime candidate for the Running Man, which is, in this case, you are set loose with $1,000 and you have to survive 30 days while hunters are trying to track you down. You have to post a video which goes onto the network every single day to prove that you are still alive, and obviously ups the tension because you are coming out into the open in order to post these videos, because it's like you post them onto cassette and it has to go into a post box rather than just doing an upload thing. And it's his desperation about, well, I need to do this. I need, it's the only way I can make money. And the way that he is treated by the network when it shows that he has a certain skills that he can use in order to survive. He's not like a totally badass assassin or anything, but he's got a way about him. He's got a certain intelligence about him that he can keep himself together and he can get out of situations. And it's basically this cat and mouse game. And the way things change, because the longer he survives, the more interest is in him actually surviving until the end, because the prize is something like $1 billion for life, that kind of idea, and very few people make it. And as it gets closer, the network starts to manipulate things to make it look as if he's been killing people and he's been doing sort of like really sort of bad things. He's not like a folk hero, because that's what he's kind of turning into. And basically the whole story then progresses from there. Lots of action, lots of fighting, wee bit of sort of interpersonal stuff, obviously, a bit of politicking in there as well, about how the media controls not only the airwaves, but has like political influence as well. And there's obviously all stuff about the use of AI and manipulating the message and all this as well. So, and it was filmed in areas of Glasgow. So when you're looking for a dystopian future city, we're number one.
We got one right here, yeah. That's a great pick. That I absolutely loved that film. I had a complete blast with it at the cinema. The cast are brilliant. Like Glenn Powell is so good in that film. Like I've never really seen enough of him to think he could carry a film by himself, but he's so good in The Running Man that he totally deserves his flowers for that. And of course, you've got likes of Josh Brolin and Coleman Domingo as well in that cast, who are given like, you know, proper high camp performances. But I had a blast with that film, and I feel like it's one of those ones that could have made my top 10 last year quite easily. I just ran out of numbers, but I don't think it performed that well at the box office. But I feel like people are missing out. It's a great film.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Obviously, now we've talked about top threes. Did you have anything that was just you were considering outside of that?
Yeah, I had looked at the likes of The Firm, the John Grisham adaptation as well. There's that one. The Devil's Advocate as well, because I thought the Keanu Reeves character was obviously quite interesting in that as well. I had looked at Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, because that's obviously a very famous speech when he sort of gets to the end of that as well, because we talked about obviously Jimmy Stewart and It's a Wonderful Life. I'm trying to think that there was a couple of others as well I had looked at. As I say, I wanted to avoid falling down. Those are the ones off the top of my head anyway that I can think of. What about you? Did you have a list?
No, I had a couple, but the main one was A Woman Under the Influence, the John Cassavetes film.
Oh, that was, yes, I also thought about that as well, yes.
Yeah, because I'd watched that a couple of years ago, and it kind of stayed with me for ages, because the performance by Gina Rowlands, obviously she died last year, year before, I think it was. And it's such a good performance. It's so powerful. And obviously she'd worked and lived with, she was married to John Cassavetes, I think, wasn't she? Yeah. So their relationship, both on screen and off screen, kind of informed us, and she was given license to just go for it, you know, and obviously given support by the likes of Peter Falk, who is really a supporting actor in this. And he was quite happy. He was quite happy to do that, because he's worked with Cassavetes. He put money into the production and everything as well. And it's just allowing that, because it was a real struggle to get the film made because of the subject matter. Studios went on to back it. And obviously when you see the final product and you see the performances, and you think, that's amazing, that's immense. It's like, it's, you know, people go into sort of depths that you wouldn't normally get. And it just absolutely brilliant. It just works so well. But yeah, that was the kind of main one that I thought of. I did obviously think of Women on the Edge of a Nervous Breakdown, but you get in there far ahead of me, because I did about my list. No, not at all, you know. But yeah, there's a number of things we could have gone through. That's there's, you know, it's quite a rich topic. But yes, so yeah.
Inception was another one I thought of as well, because obviously I'd thought about kind of insanity and On the Brink. I thought that was quite a good one. And Shutter Island, actually, as well, another Leo DiCaprio one. I thought, because there was a couple of his that I thought actually, that would work quite well.
Oh, Shutter Island would work perfectly well. Yeah, that'd be good. Might note that down for future top threes and stuff as well, because you can add them into various categories. So anyway, that is us for today, our review of No Other Choice and our top threes. If you liked what you heard, please get in touch. We are on all social media channels. Just search for Moviescramble and you will find either the logo or our very, very pretty faces staring back at you from various places, like on X, for instance. If you have suggestions about what you would like us to do, please, again, socials or on the email address, which is podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. I check it regularly, so if you do actually have something, I will look at it and reply to you, as long as it's not for like swords and knives and
Viagra.
yeah. It's all the usual stuff in there. So
Yeah.
but yes, anytime you want to get in touch. If you liked what you heard, give us a review, give us a rating. It helps towards get the word out there for everybody else. So it only leaves for me to say cheerio. I'll see you next time.
Bye.